Life is full of both challenging and beautiful moments, and the stories we tell of those times in our lives bring an opportunity to bring such encouragement and hope to those who hear them. The saying goes that we are amazed at people's achievements, but we really connect with people on their vulnerabilities. We have sat around so many tables and heard the most incredible stories of people's perseverance and victory, and our hope is that you would be encouraged on your journey as we broadcast them. This is a place where everybody's story matters. Welcome to the Journey Podcast. Welcome to episode 5 of the Journey Podcast, and I want to welcome our good friends Ruth and Darryl Earnshaw. Welcome.
Well,
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Thanks for inviting us.
Oh, no, it's a privilege to have you here. And we are part of the same church community, Coastal Family Church here in Florida, and haven't known each other for very long, but just amazed at the richness that you both carry and your love for people, and just welcoming those who are new in. And you have a beautiful home and a little dog, Gracie.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We do.
So, Ruth, I know that you were born in Florida and you were born in Oregon.
Yes.
And then you grew up in Florida though, right?
Correct.
But this is not where you met. Where did you guys meet?
Well, we met in Delta Junction, Alaska, but we ended up getting married in Fairbanks. That would have been September 16th of 1978. So we've almost been married 46 years. It's been it's amazing how fast the time has gone.
Yeah.
It's just crazy as. And to think we'd be going on 50 years here, it's just like crazy. But anyway, we met and married in Fairbanks, Alaska, and lived there 39 years. And when we married, my daughter was 10. My daughter Samantha is by my first marriage, and she has 3 adult children now. 2 are nurses in Vermont, and the grandson is a journeyman electrician outside of Boston.
And one of them's called Jenna, right?
Yeah, Jenna.
Same as our Jenna.
Jenna and Jacqueline.
Okay.
And Hunter.
Nice.
And then our son Jeremy was born October 12th, 1984. And by that time, I was an older mom when I got pregnant. I was 37, and I was young when Samantha was born. And so there was a real difference in how I felt. I felt like when I had Samantha, I was still finding myself. But when Jeremy came along, it was like, boy, I was really into that pregnancy. And it was just a great experience to go through.
I've always wondered, because I had my kids late 20s, and I always wondered, if I'd had a kid later, if I would have been just more relaxed, because there's so much growth. I'm still finding that there's just so much character building and growth and maturing. And I think, I'm sure you parent very differently. You kind of I'm sure you're more present and just slower and
definitely.
Yeah.
Even though I was a working mom, I worked for the state of Alaska. I started out in working for the state troopers. I went to probation and parole and the district attorney's office. And by that time, I was really tired of criminal justice. And I determined I wanted to have a job where there was a window and trees. And so I went to work for Division of Forestry, and I worked for the state of Alaska for over 20 years. And Daryl worked at the university in maintenance. But back to our son, when he came along, there was 16 years difference between the kids. Wow. So it was like having an only child. It's like
having another first child, yeah.
Yeah, it was really different.
It was for me.
Yes, okay. Yes.
Because, Samantha was 10 when we got married, and so she was 16, I believe, when Jeremy was born. So it was like a first one for me, even though I love my daughter. Yeah. It was really different. Yes. So.
Yeah. And a son, that's quite cool. Yeah, you guys experienced both.
I never thought I would have another child.
Wow.
And because we've been married 6 years. But a visit to my doctor, because I don't think I ovulated regularly. Not that, I don't know if I should mention that, but
You can talk about whatever you like on this podcast. This is real life.
Anyway, he gave me one pill and it was like, bam, I was pregnant. And then, of course, you pray, Lord, let me not have 3 or 4.
Yeah, because that's the other part, right? It's like, woohoo!
And she didn't.
You're having quadruplets.
I didn't know she had taken the pill, and we're getting to work ready for work one morning. She goes, "I'm pregnant," and I go, "Oh yeah, right." I thought she was kidding. She goes, "No, I'm pregnant," and I was like, "Oh man, that was totally awesome."
So
that's amazing.
And he was such an easy kid to raise. I mean, I'd rock him and just pray over him. And of course, we dedicated Jeremy at the church that we were going to at that time. And he was just an easygoing kid. I mean, played t-ball and did all the things that normal kids do. And he loved sledding, and as he got older, he loved skiing and
snowboarding.
And he liked anything that was kind of wild.
Okay.
He was the kind of boy growing up that where if you said, I'm going to give you $20 to bite the head of this fish off, maybe a little grayling or something,
he would do it. He just lived life
he did it.
fully. And today's episode is dedicated to Jeremy. And I think that was one thing that, when we were just chatting about your story, Fred and I, and we both said, wow, like we weren't sure if you'd be willing to come and share about it. But because for those who don't know, Jeremy, he passed away in, what year was it? 2008, right?
Yes.
At the age of 24, just in this freak.
23, actually.
Yeah, 23, that's right. I said 24 and you've already corrected me once before, but in my head it was 24, so that's what he is now. 23. And there was a freak wave off the coast of Australia. And so, just thank you for coming in today to share the story, because the beauty that came out of that, it's just amazing to see what the Lord has done through all of that. But even just in hearing how much he loved life, because with our son John, he's in t-ball. I mean, he's in baseball now, but boys are so special. Just
they're great.
Love their mamas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jeremy went to Catholic school all his high school, elementary, junior high school. And so the kids he went to school with, he felt like, especially the girls, they were all his sisters. And he just had a great relationship with all of them. And anyway.
Well, I know when Jeremy was born and I was holding him in the hospital, and I made a commitment to myself that I would hug and kiss him every single day and tell him I love him. Every single day. And so I really did that, except there was a time, 12, 13, where it's like no public display.
Oh.
But, in a couple, in a very short period of time, couple of years, it'd be like we'd be in the grocery store, and of course he was taller than me. Of course, everybody's taller than me, but we'd be walking in the store and he'd just grab my hand and hold it. And here he is, 14, 15 years old. And he says, "This is my dad. I love him, And so it was just like, totally awesome to be, you always hear this term, you need to be present in their life, but it was just a natural thing to do that for us, And so he was just very kind-hearted, very, welcoming to everybody. I mean, he could hold a conversation with a 5-year-old or an 85-year-old.
Amazing.
It just didn't matter. Yeah. And to him, he just loved people and loved life. And, and when he was 13 years old, I went to his bedroom. I said, "Jeremy, I need to talk to you." He goes, "Okay." I says, "Just because me and your mom are believers doesn't automatically make you a believer. You have to make your own choices and decisions on that." And I says, "Now, if you choose not to follow God, I'm still going to love you. But you know what I want you to do." And so he made his own decision to follow Jesus. Because I said, once you own something, nobody can take it away. Yeah. Once it's yours, it's yours. And so, of course, him being in Catholic school, he had religion class. And so, of course, it was the Catholic theology. And so he would come home and he'd say, Dad, this is what we were talking about in religion class. He goes, it doesn't, what do you think? I says, well, let's go to the Bible. So it was very good for both of us that he went to Catholic school.
Yeah.
I mean, it was structured, but not so structured that he had no freedom. But yet to come home and say, Dad, this is what we were talking about, it got us into the Word of God.
That's amazing.
Who's God? What is God like? What is Jesus like? And so I just really love that part of our growing up together,
I think I've really appreciated that, even like with our kids, just having that open dialogue. It's just, you can just chat naturally. And I've even found it's often while you're driving in the car or those moments before bed. And with little boys, like John can be silly sometimes, like you can be praying and he'll be like trying to see how many things he can touch on the bunk above him or whatever. And I remember at one stage kind of feeling like, no, you must close your eyes and you must, feeling like I wanted him to look the way I thought it needed to look. And I remember the Lord saying, I'm actually okay with all of this. He's a boy and I'm actually okay with that. And then to see he can be so silly like that, but then he'll have tears in his eyes because he's praying for his friend. And just to see that compassion that the Lord, he works in our hearts. And it must have just been a most incredible journey, just seeing Jeremy and his love of the Lord. And how did it lead him? Because he ended up at YWAM, which is Youth with a Mission in Australia, which is not anywhere near America. So how did he land up going there? Did he study first and then go, or how did that work?
Well, we had a very close relationship with a bunch of friends in Alaska. It was a very good community that we had, and we still keep those friends. But a lot of people are living in Alaska without their immediate families, and you just create this bond. And so many of our friends, their kids had already done Youth with a Mission. And Jeremy's, one of his first exposures to Youth with a Mission was, besides he did Young Life, and he did Young Life camps in Oregon. And, but they had, it was called NICO. It was a weekend thing where the kids, I don't know what NICO stands for, but they put them out in the Alaska bush. All they have is their backpack, and they have a compass, and I think they have to butcher a chicken or something.
They have to
there.
catch and kill a chicken and cook it.
And they build teamwork.
Yeah. Okay.
And they have to survive for, I think it's 3 days that they did that. Yeah. And so that was his first exposure. And like I said, he loved that. He thrived on that kind of stuff. And so when Jeremy was approaching his graduation in 2003, he and his friend Peter decided that they were interested in doing Youth with a Mission. Okay. And so, of course, at that time, before we weren't dealing with COVID, there was all kinds of bases all over the world that you could pick. You could go to Sweden, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia. But you really needed to look how many people were at that base, what was the base run like, what did they offer?
Yeah.
And so when they took a look at Newcastle, it was Jeremy loved to play his bass. He loved skateboarding. He loved working with youth. And so they picked Newcastle, Australia, which is 2 hours north of Sydney. And so when he graduated in 2003, he and Peter set off for Newcastle. And they did their discipleship training, which is 6 months. I think it's 6 months.
Yeah, I believe it's 6 months.
And they do 3 months of teaching on different like hearing from God, building your relationship with the Holy Spirit, finances, and then you do outreach. And Jeremy's outreach at that time was going around and helping put on skate camps in small communities in New South Wales. So he went to unusual names for us, like Wagga Wagga, Dubbo, and Orange.
Actually, that was one of the things that was so strange for me. I was sharing with you earlier that I went to Australia for 6 weeks, right before Fred and I got married. And the names from the very first, it would be like Coonborough or like just this like strange, like all the bird names and everything sounds different. The wildlife sounds different. The birds sound different. And the street names, everything is just, so
very different. And so after that, I think he came home and worked for a short period of time. But then he decided he wanted to do a school of evangelism. And I think that studied the book of Romans. And they spent most of their time consuming the book of Romans, which he really loved. And after the 3 months with that, his outreach, then YWAM had the 1040 window to unreached people groups and nations. And I think his outreach at that time was to Cairo, Egypt.
Wow.
And I remember being at work that day. Oh, and before that, he had gone down to a little shop down the road from the YWAM base, and he had this tattoo put on his chest of Philippians 1:21. I wasn't a tattoo mother. I wasn't into ear piercings, nose piercings, and my son certainly picked up some of that while he was in Australia. And my husband, in his wonderful wisdom, said, don't harp at him. He will grow out of it. And he certainly did. But anyway, he puts this tattoo on his chest of his life verse, which is Philippians 1:21. For me to live as Christ, and if I die, it's gain. And off he went to Egypt. He loved Egypt. He loved the food, loved the people. And me, I'm thinking, oh, goodness gracious, it's just so, it's a Muslim country.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the stories while he was there is he actually got this Egyptian taxi driver to let him drive the taxi.
What?
Yeah. I mean, that's just the way Jeremy was.
He sounds like one of those guys who could just like sell ice to an Eskimo.
And another story was there's this church there that's old Orthodox church, and that says that's where Jesus went when he fled Israel as a baby to go into Egypt. And there's this well there. And so Fred, who was his outreach guy, went over and he's pretending to drink this water. He says, man, that is the best water I've ever tasted. Jeremy, come taste this. And he went over there and he's retching. He's actually tasted one. He was just retching, but that's the kind of jokes that they would just do on each other. So
I think it was really Sam Street.
Oh, Sam Street. Sorry. Fred was his mentor.
Okay.
So thank you.
They probably would have all done the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, Sam might watch this,
Yeah, you never know, yeah. But so he was really good. He was very inclusive. And on his first outreach, just to say this, is that he had the money to go over where they were going. But one of the girls did not have the money to go. So he says, I'll stay behind and we'll do an outreach in country. Wow. So that's just the kind of guy he was. He was just very...
When I was looking up on the website just to look at, their videos and things, because there's been a whole ministry now that's come out. But he just he was with the youth, and it's just amazing. It almost took me back. I mean, I grew up in Port Elizabeth, and, they were all the skateboarders and he just looked like such a nice guy. Just loved the kids, loved the youth, a really good heart.
Well, Jeremy could bring home friends with black fingernail polish, and I'm going as a mom. What's up with that?
Yeah.
It's like, anyway.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff just did not affect him at all.
Yeah, he just loved people.
He really loved people. And when he was in Egypt, he had started a relationship with a young girl from Australia, Christina Cupitt. And they started their long-distance relationship. She came to know the Lord through YWAM, and they met there at the Newcastle base. And so they started this long-distance relationship. And, of course, even when he came home, and they were always on the screen together chatting and stuff like that. But
how long was he in Egypt for?
I think they were there 3 months.
Okay. And then he went back to Australia.
Went back to Australia and came home for a period of time.
Okay.
And earned some more money because you have to raise your funds.
Yes.
And so we not only felt, and our friends were a blessing, they donated and helped, and we would put on spaghetti feeds or whatever to raise money, maybe having kangaroo meat or something like that, kangaroo chili for everybody.
And Vegemite.
And we had a great supportive church. And so he determined, But I want to say on that, we felt like he also needed to earn some of his funds.
Yes.
It was important for him to do that. And he had numerous jobs besides working on the train, Denali trains, changing out gray water. He worked doing flagging on the highways. He was for state of Alaska. But he then decided to go on staff, and I think that's a 2-year commitment. So Jeremy committed 2 years to go on staff. And during this time, his relationship is increasing more and more with Christina, and he's talking about marriage and talking about buying rings. And his friend Peter ended up marrying a young girl from Kona. And so that was at the beginning of 2008. And so we met up. Jeremy flew over from Australia, and we met up in Kona, had a nice vacation there, and his 2 friends came also from Fairbanks. And so we had a great time with him there in February of 2008. And then I retired with the state of Alaska in May. And we were planning on doing just, what's it called, Daryl?
We're mission building.
Mission building with the
Yes.
YWAM base. We had already applied for our visa. We had our tickets. And for 3 months at the end of 2008. And on Father's Day 2008, I had called Jeremy that morning. I woke him up and I forgot the time change. And I said, don't forget it's Father's Day, son. Give your dad a call. And he said, oh, hey, Mom, I'm on it. So he immediately called his dad and you guys talked.
Well, we just, talked about, because he's a reader, I'm a reader. So we always talked about, well, what are you reading? What music are you listening to? He would keep me up on the latest good music, And so we just chatted like that. And, our last words together, he goes, I love you, Pops. And I go, I love you too, And so those were the last words that, we spoke to each other. And so then we went out to Father's Day dinner with some friends. And then on the way back, we kept getting these messages, but we had no, cell phone. So when we got home, or we said, when we get home, we called. And so Ruth called them, and they said,
that's where they said there's been an accident. And what had happened is Jesse Lee from Minnesota, Christina, and their friend Elise Liston and Jeremy went down to a little park close to Christina's house. It's called Fraser Park. And there's a point out there called Snapper Point. And the boys, they wanted to show Jesse and Elise where he wanted to propose. There's a little sandy beach there and stuff. And so the girls went back up to the car while they went climbing on the rocks. And eventually they're wondering what is taking them so long. So they go down to the rocks there, and Jesse is in the water and he's just swirling around. He had no way to get back to the rocks. And even if he had, they would have been probably slick, unable.
It was very rough water that day.
It was winter in Australia. And so they couldn't see Jeremy anywhere. So Christina took off running, got into her car, and as she was going around a curve, she hit the side of the road and broke her axle. So she took off running and located a guy driving into the park that helped to get the rescue workers, the rescue helicopter on the way, and back to find what's called over there an angel ring. And to get that to Jesse to be able to save his life until the helicopter arrived to be able to wrench him out. And of course, he was hypothermic. He was hypothermic by that time. And anyway, of course, we're in Alaska, and it's kind of like my friend used to call me a good Jewish mother. Maybe now they call them helicopter mothers, but your kid's in Australia, you're in Alaska, and there's nothing it's a situation that you have no control over. Yeah. So in your face, you have no control, and all you can do is pray. And so we started praying. Friends of his showed up
because
at
they obviously just never saw Jeremy.
They never saw
Jesse,
Jeremy.
but they just never saw Jeremy.
Yeah, they saw Jesse, but never saw Jeremy. And so we just started. Friends showed up. His friends showed. Our church group, my coworkers showed up. And we formed a little mini command center in our house, waiting for calls from the rescue workers and from the YWAM base, updating us onto what.
It must have been absolute torture being so far away.
Oh, it was crazy.
And the time zones too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I forget the time frame there. I started sending out an email on my computer, and I was emailing our friends around the country, and here's how to pray, pray for the rescue workers, and especially pray for Christina, because Daryl and I may be his parents, but we're a lot older here, and he loves us, but he really had her heart, and he wants her to make it through this. And I hit the send button, and Monica, who's like a daughter to us, Jeremy and Monica grew up together. And I think Daryl went over and picked up my flip top, at that time, cell phone. And it was a message from Jeremy after I had sent the send button, and it says, "Mom, you said that so much better than I." Now, there was really no reason for that text. But through this whole experience, it's amazing how God moved. And so our friends, Monica and Steve Newmuth, another friend, they're preparing tickets for Daryl and our pastor friend to fly to Australia, and two of Jeremy's friends also. And so they make preparations to fly. I stay home and keep the house going with a place for his friends to stay and to be updated and in our Christian community. And so Daryl goes on to Australia.
And so I come to the YWAM base, and there it's very welcoming, and they're just making preparations and all that kind of stuff. And the thing that really amazed me,
found him.
Well, they never found Jeremy. And so, but the thing that really amazed me was how big the story was nationwide. Yeah. I mean, it really was amazing to me. And so, you had that aspect, people wanting to call you and talk to you all the time, and all these things and everything, but you really had to focus on the kids there. So when I went there, the next day we went to the skate park, and I hung out with all Jeremy's
There's
buddies.
Actually footage of that on the website. It's so
and
beautiful.
So, and I took, a photo album of Jeremy and, his baby pictures and stuff like that. And so it was really a good time to let them download and just, kind of love on them, and then, at the memorial service, I mean, it was just totally awesome. I mean, I'm kind of, as you can see, Ruth has her little green armband there. Oh, and Jeremy also had a hat that he wore, like in the picture that's on the card. Yeah. He's got this straw hat. And so the YWAM base there got like 70 of the straw hats that they handed out to the kids to wear to the memorial. And so, because, this is probably the first time in most of these kids' life that they've experienced somebody that they know that has gone. Mm-hmm. They're dead, And so, but anyway, the whole experience, it was hard, but it was good because you're caught up in the moment of ministering to others.
Yeah, and you've just lost your own son.
And so I was very thankful that at the memorial, the lady from Georgia, her name is Barbara. She comes up and she says, "I just felt the Lord, tell me to come here to stand in for your wife, just to pray for you, just to be here, for you." And I said, "Thank you." And it was very brief, and so, but the whole time that I and Jack were there, You know, I mean, there were some humorous times, and there were some crying times, but overall, I didn't really know the impact of it until, a few years later. Where we have gone back and forth, 5 or 6 times. So on one of these trips, I just asked the YWAM base leader, whose name is David Stevenson. Thank you. Whew. And I says, well, what did you, what was your expectation? So when you came, he says, we had no idea how you would be, because of, such a tragic accident, and he says, and we were so thankful that when you came, you just loved on everybody, and so anyway, it was just really an amazing time. And so coming back, we came back, and then we had a memorial service in Fairbanks, and a lot of the people from Australia came over.
Oh, wow.
So go ahead.
What a loved young man.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so for me, dealing with the loss, I had never experienced anything that enveloped such darkness over me. When I would go to bed at night, it was like, especially at first, a blanket of just grief. Yeah. And even as Jason shared on Sunday, I felt like I had to immerse myself in praise and worship. So the praise and worship was always going on at the house. Even Monica said, I hate that song now anymore, that blessed be the name of the Lord.
Yes.
Even when the darkness overcomes, I'm still going to praise his name.
And that story actually came out of Matt Redman. That's right. Matt Redman wrote that song. And it was, they had lost a child. And so that's where the song was birthed. So it's amazing that you were.
So I played that and I sang that over and over.
Amazing.
I'm still going to praise your name through this, because I remember walking to my back door in my garage and opening it. And I said to myself, God, I could really walk away from you over this. I've lost my dad and my grandparents, my mom. And of course, I just recently lost my sister, but I experienced a lot of loss at a young life, but not my son.
No.
And
no parent should have to bury their own child. It's terrible.
And so I had to take captive that thought to the obedience of Christ and turn back around and get that praise and worship music on, because that ministered to my soul. It massaged my heart. Yeah. And so at the same time as they're finishing the memorial, which I want to say the youth in Australia, they knew that Jeremy liked green. And so they wore these armbands with 1.21 on it, short for Philippians 1:21. And so that's how we got Philippians 1:21. So anytime I see 1:21 or the time frame with that, it's like, yeah, there you go. And so they all wore them to school the following week, and kids would say, what does that mean? So it would open the door for them to be able to share Jeremy's story in Philippians 1:21. And I
see even his journal. Look at the journal. It says, death is life, Philippians 1:21. You can see his handwriting.
Yeah, he had such a wisdom in that area. But so if we're doing the memorial in Fairbanks, we felt it was extremely important to bring Jesse and Christina and Elise, just so they could have some closure of their own. And David Stevenson and his wife, Carrie, also came. So we had quite a group come from Australia to Fairbanks. And of course, we have great friends that put them all up, Vincent, Annie, and Trina and Charlie, and whoever put them all up. And we prepared the memorial service there, and Jesse Lee played the bagpipe, and he loved to play the bagpipes. And anyway, as David Stevenson was coming over, he was wearing his armband on the plane, and people would stop and say, what's the armband represent and stuff on the plane and in the airports and stuff. And so when David gets there, he says, I think we have something here. Yeah. And I said, oh, I just retired, David. I'm not looking for something to do.
Yeah.
And of course, the YWAM base. So it just kind of became a life of its own. The YWAM base had a recent picture of Jeremy. And they decided, well, we'll put the website together. And a friend in Fairbanks said, oh, we could do wristbands. And another friend, Stevie Lujan, wrote a bookmark.
Wow.
And then Elise, who was with Jeremy that day, wrote the back of the card. And so it just became this ministry, not for something that Daryl and I started. And so it's kind of a small ministry that we have, but we do support pastors overseas in India or Indonesia or Africa. If we mail them cards, and it's an easy opener to talk about. And lots of friends translated the cards. It's in 13 languages now.
Wow, that's amazing.
So some of Jeremy's friends translated it into Arabic and French, and another friend in Danny Ho translated it into Mandarin.
Chinese.
Thanks, Daryl.
There you go. Good job, Daryl.
Hey, yes.
I got one.
And so we mail the cards and the wristbands for free overseas to people that request. But we also like, if we have the funds, we're able to send Bibles if they request them. A friend of Jeremy's does a big ministry there in the red light district in Tijuana. And they've given out Spanish Bibles to the whole community. And so we've provided Bibles for them. And,
wow.
And they try and bring the youth in and teach them guitar and how to read. And so we help them in different ways, Amanda and Gezi, that are down there with YWAM. But, it's been an interesting journey that God has led us on.
Yeah.
And just very different.
And the thing that I really want to make a point about is it's not keeping Jeremy's legacy alive just to keep it alive.
Yeah.
We talk about Jeremy and his journey and our journey to lift up and glorify the name of Jesus Christ, because he's really what our life is all about.
Yeah.
Our loss, our love, and what our journey is all wrapped around Jesus and how he is always present. And so really and like, Ruth was saying, we had no input really on how this thing started. It was almost like they put it on a platter and said, here, and
often those are the things that really, like when it's just the right, when there's the Lord's favors on it, you really don't have to do a lot. There's not a lot of striving in it. It just kind of takes on a life of its own.
It did. And it just, took off. And so,
and one of our pastors in Alaska there, he writes a lot of the nonprofits, the paperwork for it. And he says, I'll write this up. I'll do it all for free. And so every year now we do our filing for the nonprofit.
Wow.
And when we get testimonies in from people, I might have been in the jungle in South America, and I came along this hut, and here was a card of Jeremy's.
Wow.
And can I get some more?
That's amazing.
Wristbands and cards. And what an opening it had been to sharing the gospel. Yeah. And I remember when Osama bin Laden had been captured, that was about our first time we received our first request from Pakistan. So when I send something into Pakistan, it's like, this is just crazy.
Yeah, amazing.
It is. And we had determined that if God opened doors for us to travel anywhere or to share Jeremy's story, that we would. And so our friend Pastor Carl had asked us to go, I think it was 2009, into Indonesia with him. We have friends that run a medical clinic on the island of Halmahera. They're Aussies too, Peter and Esther Scarborough. And so he asked us to journey with him over there. And that's where we met our friend Silvana. And she does a lot of ministry now throughout Indonesia. And we were taken into some of the schools there in Manado, and the door was just wide open to share in the high school with all the youth about Philippians 1:21 and his love for Jesus. And of course, we asked permission of the Muslim students that were in those classes if we were able to share. We didn't want to offend them, but it just really creates a door opener. And
I was just thinking now, all the things that you were sharing, I think if Jeremy, and look, we don't know if Jeremy knows now or if he's going to know in the future, but I just think that he would be so proud of both of you and just so grateful that, because he just loved people and loved life and lived, for the lost and for the young, and was so inclusive, and the fact that you experienced so much loss yourselves, and in that just did what he would have wanted. He would have wanted you to be there for those who were hurting and grieving. And I think it would have been easier to just close the door and kind of say, well, nice one, God, and kind of stop living. But you took this and said, we're going to live and live fully.
That's one thing I did say to myself, okay, Ruth, you can get healthy through this, or you can make yourself sick and die and sit and look at his picture all day. Yeah. And I determined I'm going to, I need sunshine. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to eat right. I'll get a massage. I'll get in the Word and worship. Yeah. And I'm going to get through this. And of course, it wasn't just about us. It was making sure Christina got through this too. Mm. And the connections that God put, a fellow named Peter that went to Victory Church there, I forget his last name, but he was able to connect us to a female Christian counselor for Christina to go to. And we were able on some of our journeys over to help Christina. She applied and went to uni, get another replacement vehicle. And one of the interesting things I forgot to mention to you was that, or I did type it out and say it took a year to get Jeremy's death certificate, which was crazy. But they want to make sure that they didn't just disappear.
Yeah.
They're living another life.
I kept thinking of that this last week since we chatted, that I think those thoughts would kind of haunt me. Like, what if he's in a cave somewhere? And didn't someone say to you that they actually felt like he was, had been picked up and was in a different country or something? I mean,
well, they felt like they had a vision that Jeremy was in a cave.
Oh, okay.
And
and then you and I had said, like, what if someone had picked him up and
he's a
like
slave,
those questions you just don't know, to have no closure on those things.
Maybe he hit his head on the rocks and he has amnesia and he's living somewhere else.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that just goes.
Yeah,
it just goes
through the back of your mind. Like,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And so I think we had to provide, like, his bank account. There had been no activity, and I forget what else. But it took a year to get the death certificate, because when he was over there, we had AD&D, accidental death policy on him, not thinking that something was ever going to happen. I think it was through Seven Corners, so they wouldn't pay anything until you had the death certificate. And we also had to give, I had to give my DNA for the New South Wales police. So if they ever did find any remains of Jeremy, they would be able to identify
him.
But just a lot of different things that happen. But we stay in contact with Christina. Matter of fact, I just talked to her yesterday. But communication is just
so different now, right?
Amazing point that it's just crazy.
Yeah.
But,
in our community, we've experienced loss recently, just with Rod and Val losing their son. And I know there are a lot of people actually in our circles who have lost someone. And loss and death is something that touches everyone at some point, or we have loved ones that have lost somebody. And I just thought, in closing, And these things are so hard to talk about, but what are some things that were really helpful to you guys, just as we close out, that we would know, that people can know what to do when someone does lose someone? Because we all love people so, like you love people so deeply and you want to do the right thing, but sometimes what we want to do is not necessarily helpful in the moment. Can you guys just speak into that just briefly as we...
Well, there's
kind of
definitely
close out?
some things you don't want to say. Well, your son is in a better place. Or God just needed another angel. Or fortunately, you're young enough to have more children. Or we weren't praying enough for Jeremy as a corporate body.
Wow.
Didn't have enough faith.
Or didn't have enough faith. And those are definitely things you don't want to say. And I think the best thing to do is say, I want you to know I love you and I'm here to support you. And there are no words.
Yeah.
And
Your words are so difficult.
oh, they are. And I look back and I was thinking on, I'm also in the process at that time knowing of things I need to do. My garden needs to be weeded and things, just doing practical self-help things. My friend Teresa McDonald, who was dying of breast cancer, she came over with her headscarf on and we're out there weeding the garden together and stuff. And just so touched me that here's someone going through her own journey of pain, that she would take time out to come help me weed my garden. And just being available. You don't have to have, like the people who came and Ken and Teresa or any of our friends that came to our house during that time, even just sitting there or washing dishes or feeding people or going for a walk with you. Or
not necessarily having to have the right words, because nothing takes it away.
No. You're all of a sudden involved in a community of people that you don't want to really belong to.
No.
And it's a monkey you carry around on your shoulder that no matter where I go, I can't run from this situation.
Yeah.
And I've got to make it through this. And people grieve differently. And they grieve for longer periods of time. I don't think the loss of a child is anything you get over right away.
No.
And
maybe you don't ever. Maybe you just learn to live with it.
Well, it's the new normal. It's what they call the new normal. And, for me, it was like when I hear somebody that I know that have lost somebody, I just say, if you want to chat, I'm available.
Yeah.
Because there are no words.
No.
Like you're saying, there are no words.
Yeah.
And of course, we as people, especially as a church, we don't really know how to go through that deep of suffering. We don't talk about it. Death is just a concept that's way out there in the future sometime. But when it's now and in your face and it's the reality of where you're at, what do you do? Where do you go?
Yeah.
You see? And so to me, it's like, from my personal opinion, the church needs to address suffering more than it does.
Yeah.
Because, we're always talking about the joy,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also the suffering together.
Yes.
We have joy together, we suffer together. How do we do that?
Yeah.
And I think as a wife, I was also looking and encouraging the men in our church, please contact Daryl and get together with Daryl. Men don't naturally do that.
Yeah.
Women do.
Yes.
But the men needing to learn to look out for each other is
I'm
a big
offended
deal.
by that.
Daryl.
No, but it is true. Men have a harder time.
And women do naturally kind of, we'll take a chance on getting in someone's business if we need to, but men kind of, they can be, we'll just say they're more respectful. Does that make you feel better, Daryl?
No.
Not really.
No.
Okay.
But to me, I'm different. I'm built different.
Yeah.
I'm very relational. I'm very touchy-feely. I'm very, you want to sit down and have a chat, let's sit down and have a chat.
Yeah.
So
but
I'm
I think
different
it's
in that
important. It is
respect,
good. Like as a church, we do need to, and just as people, know how to handle these situations when people lose. But I just wanted to thank you both so much for joining me today and just sharing, just the remarkable life of Jeremy, and that his life, it's like this legacy that, just continues, and how lives are being changed, that in loss, God, like the redemption out of that, the beauty out of the ashes is like
Well, one of the
remarkable.
scriptures that came to me during this time of loss was, unless a grain of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abides alone. And I've seen that happen. Jeremy went down into the ground, but what has come out of it has been phenomenal.
Amazing.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just want to thank you both. I know that there'll be many people, just as I kind of went a little, but just dove a little more into Jeremy's life and looked at the website and all of that. We're going to be putting the details below, but can people get involved with that? Can they donate? How can people get involved?
Sure. If anybody wants wristbands or cards to mail or to hand out, they can always request or just ask us. If you go to the website, 121.com, and that's spelled out, there's a link where you can just send us an email and we'll mail cards out to you. I'll get in contact with you. And if you wanted to donate, there's a PayPal account. We don't have Zelle or anything at this point, but or you can send a check through the mail made out to 121.
Right.
And nothing that is donated goes to Daryl or I. It goes all towards the ministry. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Journey podcast. I hope that you were encouraged and that you would have a really great week just reflecting on what we've spoken about today. If you have a story that you feel needs to be shared to encourage those who listen, please would you write a comment in the comment section below and we will reach out to you via email. Thanks for joining us and we look forward to the next episode of the Journey podcast next week.